Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is still Saturday, August the 18th, 2018. And boy, have I done a lot of recording today. Yay, I love it. So I'm back with my gal pals, Lisa Flamino Rush and BZ Rigger, because now we're going to do one that I've been itching to do. And we already have a title. Usually we don't have titles for that. I'm weird, but I usually beg BZ, you got a title for what we just did? This one is actually from BZ too, but I love it. Claim it, own it, trust it, know it.
It's something that I said a long, long time ago to both of you early on in our conversations. And your connection with, meeting with, grokking of now is very different, vastly different,
Yes.
totally different.
I know.
Than back then.
I'm telling you, I don't even recognize myself.
I know. I know. It's crazy wild.
I know.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, BZ. Well, and thank you, Lisa, too.
Sheila and Lisa.
Well, no, she's right about that. I, in this moment of now, I can see all the layers of that. Yes, I'm very grateful for the two of you, but I'm also really seeing on another level, on a separately different level, how I pulled all of this into me. Lisa, you pulled all of it in for you.
Sheila for Sheila, Lisa for Lisa. Absolutely. That's the way it goes. You are you. So in my screen, Sheila's over here and Lisa's down there. So you are the expert for each one of you. And yes, you can experience other things and connect with it. Absolutely. That's fabulous. Terrific. Delicious. Right? But when we have the habit, so this goes, hey, look at that, right into this conversation, right? On the claiming part. So often we wait for the next, well, right now, a lot of people, wait for the next cue drop. Okay, but that's giving your power away. And that's not claiming the truth of who you are. That's not claiming the magnificence that's right inside of you. Or you do it with, your favorite video person who comes on, or a channeling, or a notice, or whatever it is. It's all sorts of things, and it doesn't have to be on the spiritual side either. It can be, on the next, Bitcoin, report, or whatever it is. Oh, I can't wait to see what they're going to say. Well, that's cool that you want to see, and it's engaging, and you fit in with that, and that's excellent. All fabulous. But when there feels like there's a void when they're late, or they haven't come out, or why haven't they posted, or well, now what do I do? That's a very clear indication that you are not claiming that which you are. And if you look at that and the energetics around that, and then you look at a lot of the stuff that's going on around us right now, that would be a pretty good indication of how we got here.
Yeah.
Just saying.
No, that's very true. It's such what I'm discovering in all of this for me is that it's such a multi-layered thing. All of it is very multi-layered. Well, every single bit of it I see as multi-layered, but and connected to the one layer just before that. So it seems like the more I open up and expand the aperture of the lens by which I'm willing to view things, the more that information comes in, and I can see those different layers of it and claim those different aspects that I very clearly feel are mine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they all are on one level or another. Okay, they all are, because, you know, we're all one. We got that going on. Whether we like it or not, that's the way it is. But in that that fractalization, or whatever you want to call it, as we went out to explore the different avenues of how we, you know, just having experiences, just owning that that is the way it is, and feeling those things as they're starting to come back in, and owning that too. The good, the bad, the ugly, so to speak, is all mine, all aspects of me. It's just been, it's so delicious. I'm sorry, I'm getting lost in the multi-layeredness of it.
Well, and the owning it, as you say, is there's, you know, kind of multiple layers as you're going through, and you were kind of describing, as you go out, widen your aperture a little, you can see the owning part, and that's a beautiful way to describe it. I would also describe it the other way around. So the owning of it is that it's always there, whether you see it or not.
Well, true.
It's always there, whether you understand it or know it or not. And no, more from a thinking no, not a knowing no, you know. And the owning of it as well is a fully opened heart space. And in that space, there is no good, bad, ugly, or otherwise. It's simply, those are labels, those are false constructs, those are terms and descriptors, and for the most part, they are arbitrary judgments on something. Now, if you're a human being on this planet and you're, you know, fully remembered and ensconced and all that, you don't think it's arbitrary because there's right and there's wrong. Okay. Well, that's a perspective, especially when you're continually trained and reinforced and have proofing. We've talked about, you know, how I use that word for agility, so proofing that you have that reaction regardless of where you are. So in a safe setting, in a scary setting, in a whatever setting, you're being continually trained and proofed that you'll have that reaction, because then you're easy to have you flow through stuff. And it's also easier to keep your heart closed, and easier to keep your aperture from expanding, easier for you to keep you just, you know, on the line, because then you're more productive. Well, then that's where your value is to those who are, you know, and again, all of this is from a linear perspective.
Right. The whole time you were describing that, I kept seeing Pavlov's dog, because that's pretty much what that is. Mm-hmm. Or at least that's what I felt. But I wanted to say too that in my description of that aperture business, my aperture expands and then contracts. I find myself doing this a lot, sometimes unconsciously. I'd like to get it to the point where I'm conscious in every moment of now, and then I feel like at that point my aperture will, you know, stabilize to a particular point. I don't know. This is all new for me. So for right now, I can see, you know, the pinprick aperture too, just like anybody else. You know, I have a propensity to do that too. So I think until, and maybe not at all, for as far as I know, but I think, yeah, as I go along, at least right now, I have this, you know, sliding, adjusting aperture, depending on where my programming and conditioning is in any given moment, and how diligently I'm looking after that, I think.
Well, you've also described where you have if I had two lenses, okay, side by side, and you've done this with them, so you can have a or actually it's a bilocational consciousness where you can pull back and see one thing where it's a narrow aperture and a broader aperture simultaneously.
And see that both are correct.
Now, yeah, and I think the other thing that sometimes gets confused in this, because we're so used to thinking being small. We're small. No, we can't do anything. They're not letting us, and all that kind of stuff. And that's that's an ingrained habit. So
yes, and I'm sorry, but the universe just screamed at me, and I have to share it because the cosmic humor, the cosmic comedian was just in my head going, yeah, you think you're small? Hold up a second. How many things do you think are going on in that physical vessel of yours right now that you're not paying attention to?
Right.
That's how small you are.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's great. I mean, that's a really good example of all of that. And so what I was going to say is, which kind of ties into that, is sometimes when people, until you get to the point where you can have bilocational consciousness, which is kind of the first start, and that simply means, I don't like the term per se. Just to me, it seems like a weird term, but okay, it's what people term it. So okay. You're having an experience, you're watching something, you're experiencing something, you're partaking in something, right? So it's in your sphere. And there's one focus of it, or one feeling, one perspective on it. Not quite the accurate word, but we'll go with that. Okay. And at the same time, you can also see all of that, experience all that, and have a broader aperture, broader perspective on it. And if you told the story of that from each perspective, people were listening, they would say, well, that's two different things. And two different, we could say, descriptions of, and a story on your experience of two vastly, because that's usually where you first notice it, vastly different things. And you're the same storyteller, you're the same direct experiencer of, how can that be? Because one is where you're, the tighter aperture, which is the smaller beingness, and then the broader aperture, which is the bigger beingness. And so as you pull back, we've described it, before, if my camera is tight on this, I can only see, when I hold this like this, I can only see this rectangular pet. I can't see that there's a computer there. So Sheila and Lisa are gone. Where's the computer? Oh my God, where'd it go? It just vanished. Right? So from this perspective, that's an absolutely valid perspective. I am describing to you what I can see, what's in my field of vision, what I'm experiencing. They were there, now they're not. Right?
Yes.
And I can shift it and say, oh, okay, well, wait a minute, hang on, I see, okay, that's about the same, right?
Right.
So that's
in other words, we can be here and not here all at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, that's actually was a great metaphor for something else that I wasn't going to go into yet, but yeah. Oh. And so where I was going with that is that's part of the owning it part, where you own, again, and it takes some time to comprehend that, to actually have a direct experience of that. Once you do, it's like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, that is just as so. That's the way it is.
Right.
And it seemingly very quickly, like, you forget that you ever had that other thing of, well, that can't be. What are you talking about? That's, you know, when you have shifted to, moved to, expanded to the place where you can have the bilocational consciousness, and you then describe it, it's very hard to go back to where you were, let's say, a minute ago, saying, you can't, no, that's like, make up your mind, will you? You can't. And now you're, let's say, over here, and you go, yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's clear. It's just like, and it's easy. It's a piece of cake, no brainer, right? All those kinds of things. So now it's very hard to put yourself back where you were over here. And then as you go, and so, and that's where you've stepped into the owning it. So you claimed it, you thought about it, you played with it. Now you've come into the owning part of it, and you can see it. Now, sometimes you can have some challenge or something just specifically on this particular thing we're talking about, the bilocational, or perhaps you tighten up your aperture and you lower your vibration because you haven't got it locked in to reside there all the time, and then it's almost like the picture wavers a little. So that's where the kind of the owning it comes in, and a lot of times, well, I was going to say, you know, prove it is a big. A lot of people who aren't seeing things, who don't even have the concept of the aperture changing and widening out, whether they've ever been near a camera or not. They just don't understand that. What are you talking about? I'm looking right here, you know, and not realizing that there is a focus, and that there are all sorts of unseen heretofore for that being, unknown, unrecognized, unrealized, unfelt constrictions on all of their facets of their being on this physical plane. And so
you touched on something very important there, BZ. Okay. I feel, and maybe it's a whole separate conversation. Well, it could just be where I am in this moment of now, feeling the facets of my being.
Oh yeah, that's a whole one. That's very cool.
Yeah, that's
that won't fit into my pretending to be on a break.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, no, so that's another video altogether, but it's an important because I've been feeling that one all over the place. So I'll write that one down too.
Okay, cool.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but that just felt very important. Your words right there.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's very exciting to play with.
Well, you know what I have found? The more that I trust myself, that opens or keeps the aperture open. So the minute I don't trust myself,
yeah,
instantly. So I think trust really the key. If you plan to reside here, then you have to trust.
Yeah.
You have to stay in that space.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
And so if someone comes to you and says, prove it, right? If you haven't moved fully in, you're not living fully in the trusting part, you go, well, she said, or whatever. You know, it's hard to explain because proving, what do you mean proving? Well, because again, that's selling something.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're saying the same thing. Yeah. Sell me something, you know, convince me of this. Well, that's not what it's about.
No, that's exactly what we just got through saying, wasn't it, Lisa? In our last recording is that, you know, and so, yeah, I don't have a booklet to sell you for $19.99, but, you know, yeah, I don't, and I'll be honest with you, I don't feel I think once you do trust it, once I started trusting myself, the overwhelming urge to tell somebody else a thing is kind of gone. I mean, I'm doing these videos in its place to assuage part of that, yes. Because I want to share what I'm learning. So this way, I'm not beating anyone over the head, and it's also, it's just good for me, period. But I have noticed that whole feeling of having to prove something to someone that I say, I don't have to, you know, I'm right for me, and that's all I need to be is right for me. I don't have to be right for anybody else. So if you want proof, you got to go prove it to yourself.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of really cool things in what you just said. Let's see if I can remember them all. On the last one, the proof that the other being is looking for is grounded in, mired in, locked to, in lockstep with all the linear aspects and the programming. So it's kind of like, I don't know if this is the right metaphor, but a double negative. You know, you can't prove something to exist from something that is not in the same sphere. It's not on the same plane of existence. It's not on the same energy frequency. It's just, you know, because in large measure it doesn't exist over there when you're tightly locked down in that programming, in that aperture, in that heart space, in that frequency vibrational neighborhood. You know, for the one who's completely in that, it would be accurate to say it does not exist. Therefore, hence, no proof exists to prove it. Now, as you start to, you know, morph a little bit, and maybe you've claimed it, kind of, and you're, you know, you're owning it, kind of, right? So you're kind of, you know, shifting in this thing.
Yeah.
Then you have glimpses that we've talked about of that and go, oh. You know, if you looked at something, you know.
That's kind of the way I feel. Busy, the minute you went like that, I was like, yeah, she's describing me over the past year. Oh, wait a minute. Hold up a second. That's exactly, and I wanted to say that what you're describing there for me, because I have actually now, this has been my trajectory over the past year. Okay. It's been not just a widening of the ability for me to connect to that which is already innately me, but because of that aperture widening, the focus that I can feel into that has all been a part of that. So it's like, oh, well, but you have to be able to open to want to look at some of that. You were describing that it can't exist if there's programming and conditioning in the way that no matter what kind of proof came up, it doesn't exist in that particular aperture. It can't. It doesn't fit in that frequential thing. We actually were talking about this a little bit earlier this morning too. When, you know, sometimes I can say something to someone in the physical and I can see that there's not even a frequency landing point for what I've said. It just went bye-bye. It didn't land. Right? And I recognize that we were just talking about that. It's a matter of that frequency wasn't able to
Didn't connect.
right, couldn't connect. There was nothing, and it's very much what you're speaking there of, I feel like, BZ, right?
Yeah, I'm just making a note because I want to get you're making the points so fast. I want to get back to because they're all really good. So that's a good one. But I'm trying to do them in a linear-esque way because
Okay.
people were going.
I gotcha. I'm sorry. Oh, there. No, I'm not. No, I'm not sorry. Hold up a second. That was a program and conditioning. I'm challenging myself with that right now. I'm not sorry.
Good.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear it. So that's part of the proofing one. Now I'm thinking if I can go back because I should have written the other ones down. Well, maybe I'll start there. So so we're at the claiming and the owning, and you are actually changing neighborhoods. Now the interesting thing is you may actually change physical neighborhoods. You may change the whole landscape of your family, of everything. On all levels, many times, so because on the one hand, again, when you do those things, and sometimes we freak out and we go over here and go, okay, well, whose smart idea was this, and what is so super duper megalicious about that? And what's happening is what was over when you were over here, deep ensconced in the programming conditioning, and you're shifting and you're changing, you are actually changing. And remember, out there is not out there until you create it out there. And so when you're shifting in here, you're actually breaking down all those programs and conditioning. You're breaking down those walls around your heart. You're breaking down those defenses. So, I'm sorry, but it really is the case. When you look out there, there's a lot of shit breaking down all over the place.
Right?
And sometimes
everywhere one looks.
Yeah, and sometimes one has a propensity to just go, okay, let's break it all down now. And it's like, anyways, and that, depends how you do it. Now you can do that. Now if you choose especially now, this right now, choose the pillow over the head and the Barca lounger if someone's going to give me the memo and drive me in a taxi cab over when it shows up, that kind of stuff. But so that's part of, there's those stages. I wanted to relate, there are stages to this that you see in the physical nature, the physical reality that you see, because they're all coming from you. So that's kind of where those stages are. And because there is that shifting and moving, there is also, I guess you could describe it as you're not locking yourself in to a frequency yet. So it may be that, for a day or a couple of weeks or whatever it is, you go, wow, there's a flow, you can see it, you're out there is looking really nice of what you're envisioning here, and then something may knock you off stride, or you just may do a lot of integrating, which is kind of rough and bumpy. So it seems like you go, like all of a sudden you were starting to at least visit this metaphoric house that you wanted to live in, and you got it, and then you wake up one morning and you're like, well, where am I and what am I doing here? And you're not where you were before, but you're in some place different. And so again, that's a combination of the fact that you're not at the ability yet to hold that vibration.
Right. That's what I was talking about for me with the aperture thing, how it adjusts sometimes. I think that's exactly what you've described there is exactly what I was feeling.
Yeah.
When, that portion. So yeah, that's the other thing I noticed too in the way that I wrote down what we're going to call this. I also feel very strongly about this too. This is coming in very clear for me, so I know it's a truth. I just feel it. It's the claim it, own it, trust it, know it, not necessarily in that order. And it's going to be different for each being, because I really feel like well, I know that it's going, all of this is going, it's all tailor-made for each of us. We've tailor-made all of these experiences. Some of what any one of us share may look like and feel like something similar that, any one of the other of us may be going through. And it may, my experience and how I dealt with it or whatever may kick off something to help a person, but it's not going to be exact or identical, because there isn't anything like that. We all got to get over that. We got to quit comparing ourselves to each other, because, I used to, and sometimes still do, hold BZ and Lisa at a much higher rate, higher status, if you will, than my own self, because they've been at it longer. They feel to me like they know what they're talking about much more for themselves. But that's just it. It's for themselves.
Yeah, because the rest of it is just bullshit otherwise. It's just one more thing on the other side of not claiming something. Well, but you don't understand. No. No one, yes, everybody is different. And yes, everybody's at their own space, but no one's missing anything.
And that's the other thing. Like I said, I really, honestly, I feel at this moment of now, and the more I speak it out loud, the more I know this is true too. The minute I started relaxing into where I am and being okay with the rate at which I'm progressing, which, by the way, yeah, I know. That's what I was just getting ready to say. By the way, I was only introduced to you not even a year ago, actually. So, yeah, no, this is, we all just have to quit comparing ourselves.
As soon as Sheila relaxed, her hair blew back in the chair, and the wheels were smoking on her wheelie chair. So why?
And that's the way it feels, right?
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
Well, you said something about it's absolutely the case where it's different for everyone. So you could look at it and think of claim it, own it, trust it, know it as a linear. And yes, that's absolutely, you can look at it and see, yes, it goes in those steps. It also at the same time is in a toroidal thing where you can have, the claim it and the own it and the know it and the trust it. And so they could be some point where it looks almost like one is leading the other, right? So you said different things like that, and that's absolutely the case. And you will be able to go, oh yeah, okay, I can see that. As you're stepping more firmly into it, you'll see in the toroidal where it actually kind of, the way I would describe it, it locks in. So it's actually toroidally, all of those things, depending on, for your own experience, maybe you may weight one a little heavier, so that would come out as the first one. But you also have that linear thing, and because now they're all there at the same time, and that's talks about the kind of the stages and this is where your missions come into that as well. So your being and your doing, your again, from the different perspectives out, you have your soul's mission, your galactic focus of what you're doing, and your human experiences, those kinds of things. So there's again different ways to hold it because it has to do with expansion level.
Just all the different multi-dimensional layers of self.
Yes.
Yeah, and the reason I was saying that about the linear, because I remember a time in my own trajectory where I kept asking, okay, what do you mean when you say you just know something? And so I could see where if someone's looking at these things in a linear fashion, that because I know a few in fields I've seen or met, I guess, been in some folks' fields where they know it, They know they're a creator being. They know it. But the claiming it and trusting it and the owning part, not so much. That's why I said so it can be different stages. That's why I was saying it's not a specific. I guess what I'm saying,
and you can also have a quasi knowing where it's an intellectual exercise.
I've had those.
Right?
Still sometimes do. Not gonna lie.
When it's a knowing, it's a deep, visceral knowing. And it doesn't matter what comes up, who stands in your face, where they put you, what happens, or what they bribe you with, or any variation thereof, right?
I have a specific.
Okay, cool, great.
I have a specific on this one.
Yep.
Since I've taken that intellectual enterprise of the knowing so much, I now know the difference for myself, the difference between my intellectually knowing a thing and an actual heart knowing of a thing. For me, if I intellectually know something, I will try to prove it to you. I would try to prove it to you. But if I know, sell it to you. If I know a thing, whether you get it or not is not my problem.
That's right.
I will share it with you, but as far as like proof, I know it, so it don't matter to me if you get it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds horrible and harsh.
It's not.
But
that's actually a mark of an open heart, because there is no infringement on the other being. Right. You will not alter your stance of energetic frequency, vibrational neighborhood, and the predominant frequency that you live. You will not alter your stance on your open-heartedness. You will not alter your stance on where you are in your knowing, in your expansion, in your love, and in your steadfastness in the river of that love. You won't do it. You simply will not do it. You won't do it for them or anyone else. So, if you love me, no. I do love you, and that's why I will not do that. And at the same token, you're not going to do that because that's a disservice, because that's the harm, that's breaking the harm none rule and the non-interference. And when you get in playing with this that we're talking about, you move that, you can see glimpses of it. When you get to the part where you're either from a linear perspective, to the own it, claim it, trust it, know it, the know it part, right?
Yeah.
Or from the toroidal field where I call it locking, it just is. And people can do all the gyrations they want about this and the other thing, and that's terrific. I can look at that and say, you're doing a fabulous job, because in that you're kind of, all that gyration is seemingly, to say, oh, well, you got to prove it or do this dance or song and dance or whatever it is. But what it's actually doing is shaking all of your programming and conditioning up, and some parts can drop off and big pieces could come off. And that's shaking things up in your own world. And so just by holding the space, by staying in the widest aperture possible, in that absolute love frequency, I am assisting you. If I'm over here, it does not look like that. If I'm over here and I have a closed heart and I'm in absolute, you got to prove it mode, dare you mode, blah, 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 blah mode over here, this looks like the meanest, cruelest, because I'm not going to assuage your need to be small. I'm not going to disavow your need to be closed-hearted or any of that kind of stuff. I'm going to let you do what you feel moved to do in that moment. And I will play with you to the extent that I do not then enter in a frequency that comes down from where I am. And I mean vibrational. So it's not hierarchical in the linear sense. It's just not going to go play in that field.
Right. I'm like you. I don't like using the down. I've decided that what it is my playground is just a different one. That's all.
Right.
It's actually, there is no like this. It's just, it's like a frequency. I've begun to see them as frequency bubbles, and
Yeah.
my bubble doesn't match yours, and therefore it just sort of bounces off. Now I could force it, and I have, and it's painful, and it's not fun, and I don't like it, and I'm not doing that anymore. I proved to myself that that's just not fun, and so I'm not doing that anymore. And that's a part of that knowing it and trusting it and owning it and claiming it for myself.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. So, but yeah.
And your comfort level in your steadfastness in the different ranges as you go through it, not only in the expansiveness of your vibration and the raising of your frequency vibration, so the faster that it vibrates, and what that then allows you to come into contact with. So again, just for linear placeholders, which I have to use, because most people, if I didn't, I don't think people understand me most of the time anyways, but if I didn't do that, they would go, what?
Well, I want to say, to interject here, that when you're looking at frequential things, because that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
It's on a scale. It goes from, 1 up. And so whenever, I think of frequential, and we talk about up and down, linear, like it is a linear numerical scale when they're measuring it with instruments, frequencies. Now,
From a linear perspective.
From a linear perspective.
Point of fact, it is not at all. But until you get it and see it, we can't go there, because you never get to see it and play with it.
And think about it, energy is measured in cycles per second, right? So that could also be a metaphor for your tiny aperture or your really big one. I mean, cycles. Yeah. Earlier we were talking about it in terms of pixels.
Right.
Pixels that you have, the bigger picture, the clearer picture, the more complete the picture. Yeah.
Well, so it's in conversations like these where it's very clear. I'm sorry, Lisa, I interrupted you. I'm sorry, honey.
Go ahead.
Well, it's in conversations like these. I was saying that it's very clear that the language just fails and pales in comparison. The three of us are very clear on what we're speaking in terms of. It's just that when trying to bring it into a linear. Yeah, CBC, the two of you are much better at that than I am so far.
That's why I use the phrase, linear placeholder, because it's a sounds like, so that word that you're familiar with in your linear, it sounds like that. You can kind of get a word picture around it, and it's kind of like that.
Right.
But kind of like that from a linear perspective, from the quantum perspective and the multidimensional. Not really at all, but it's, close within a couple 100 million trillion light years, but so it's good enough to paint an overall, because we got to start someplace,
Right.
It's also a feeling thing. That's why we create the energetic envelopes, because then you're ensconced in the feeling of all of it.
Right.
So I want to move to one of the things that you talked about, because I forgot the other ones. I'm sorry. You talked about the landing stages and the stages of it, and that it was when you were talking about people will do it in different ways. So that brought up a really good point to highlight, that as you move through it, and you've said it a couple times, where because I'm going to relate this back to where it has to do with your roles and your missions and stuff. So as you're waking up, as you're raising your vibration, as you're opening your heart, cutting off all the walls, and you talk about, Sheila, now you're really seeing those walls, those limitations. So again, that's a very apt description of it. It's also a metaphor for the walls that are around your heart, because it's the same. You're talking about the same thing. There's only love or fear, and there is only a closed heart or an open heart.
Right.
So closed is fear, and when you boil it down, yes, there's all sorts of layers in between you could mention and look at, but that's the simplified way, which is also the very complex description of it as well. So as you move through all of this, and I wanted to bring this one point where you say, where you realize, where you've claimed that you're a creator being, and you're getting that, and that's still kind of in a intellectual exercise area. Now you're starting to own it, and that part always makes me think of, when someone is thinking about, dancing back over that line again of the intellectual exercise or not. You've got to own it. You've got to own where, you say you're this, you say you know this, you say you've experienced this, right? So now it's time to own it. Not for anybody else, not for anything else, for yourself. And there's a beautiful warmth that rushes over you the first couple times that you own that. And you're like, oh, I see, I get it. You can feel the energy that I'm putting off around that.
I'm actually getting dizzy because I'm feeling about it how I feel when it happens for me. So yes.
So it's a palpable, visceral thing. And anyway, so that's, you go through that. I'm having so much fun playing in that thing, I kind of forgot where I was going. Oh, so then you say, okay, now I understand that, I feel that, I really, get it up here, Sheila says, and someone's wanting me to prove it or sell it to me or whatever, and I don't need to, because I know it, and that's all I'm looking at for here, and I can have love, absolutely, and connection, absolutely, but there's no need, there's no desire. It's, breaking rules whether you know about them or not, and I'm talking about, cosmic ones, and you're doing great over there because that's what you're focused on, and I'm doing great over here because that's what I'm focused on, and that's cool. And then you move to the stage where the trusting it and expanding in that, and the knowing it, and again, as you had said, there's different, you're starting to have a knowing of things. And when I'm talking about, if you look at it this way, and in the toroidal lock of the knowing out here, now you're, again, linear words. So you're steadfast in your knowing. So unshakable in your knowing. It is in every warp and weave and fiber of your being, of the physical vessel, of the energetic vessel, of the electromagnetic, of the part of you that actually is 20, 30, 40 feet wide in your fields, that's actually whole planets and systems and the stuff of stars, which is what you are. When you're doing that, then you're, again, you could say in another stage and level of the kick-ass creator beingness, where you're 100% responsible, accountable, and liable, right? And so now you've moved in the place where that's part of your mission, is to interact with others, right? Not do it for them, but you have developed, and or you either start developing and then you have developed. So it's, again, stages, stair steps, you could say, is another way, where you have capabilities that help you be in that bubble of knowing in this whole thing, so that you can interact more closely for short periods where you're not affected by whatever the energy frequency is of those different beings. So there can really be, this is a silly metaphor or picture, but you can reach out, because I thought of it because you talked about the bubble, Sheila, but you can reach, if someone's in a bubble and the boy in the bubble are right, and they're in a glove suit and they can reach in, and so you can reach in, but that energetic frequency that is now a serious discordance to you because it's just not where you reside anymore. It is not going to, provided that you do the things for you and you limit it, and it's very intentional, and you're doing it not just to play in a way that's, you're going to go play with them and be snarky, because that bubble is now burst if you do that kind of thing. But you know what I'm saying? So that's part of the work. That's part of the missions and what you're doing. And it will show up in different ways and be required in different ways, but that's part of what's going on. So on the one hand, if we're going linear, you kind of go down this road where you're doing all these things for yourself, for your being, for your soul, and your whole trajectory of going out and experiencing, self and coming back, the singularity that is you. And then you're actually moving so that you're in the frequencies where you're a galactic being in that community, and celestial in that community, and in the beyond, as you keep going beyond that, you're in that frequency, and now this is part of your job. It's part of your mission. It's part of your role of what you need to do. And roles shift and change and expand all the time. But so that's what I'm saying. So if you're in the place where you're thinking, I got this, I know this, I feel it, I understand it, and I don't need to sell anything, don't need to prove anything, but I don't want to play there, right? And that's perfect. Right. And then as you keep with that expansion, and you keep with that widening of the aperture, and you keep with the locking in those things in a very good way, so that there's it's like a lock of love. So there's more love and more love and more openness and more heart opening, and you just lock it in and lock it in. So you're not losing it. You're not wavering. You're not, it's solid in that sense. Actually, there's a metaphoric oxymoron word picture. So the solidity occurs when you've lost more and more density, and you're actually in essence energetically more translucent because you have more light, and there is not as much particles of slower, denser matter blocking the light. So Lisa got that, and she was going, huh?
No, I'm allowing it in. I want to make sure, because I can feel what you're saying, and I want to make sure I'm not trying to intellectualize.
You become a translucent light being, so you're actually less solid to linear eyes, yet you're more solid in your ability to fully lock in the love and the expansionness and let go of all of the other things.
That's what I'm saying. I feel what you're saying.
Is it first in the movie?
This is the first for me to be able to feel what you're saying.
Yeah.
And not actually comprehend what you're saying. So I'm not, you know what I mean? That's
yes. Was the movie Cocoon? Right?
Yeah.
And the swimming pool scene and the pods in the swimming pool, and they're light beings, basically.
Right.
What they are. And
right.
when they see their true form, they see that. So that's kind of the visual. That's what we all look like,
Right.
And so that's the metaphoric visual word picture that I'm trying to create. So again, it's backwards of where it may seem to make sense.
Okay, so I in just this moment of now, I got why I was having a tough time with that, because there was something trying to come in. Okay, so as you were describing how the particles. Okay, so for me, that I'm thinking as these particles of myself, or as things come up for me to look at and integrate, as those are the more dense, programmed, conditioned portions of me that I allow to fling off or cast off, or however you want to term it, as I'm
take a slingshot and
however it's happening. You were using that toroidal, the lock, because that's where I was seeing that in my mind is, okay, so these portions, okay, I see that now, and I've integrated that in. And so the part that no longer serves as flinging off, that's what's helping that density to be lightened in that particular fashion.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I could feel what you were saying for some reason. Yeah, there was a frequential thing. But like I said, this is very interesting because this is happening to me a little more and more. And as we know, and I swear that there's a big whole bunch of laughter behind this for some reason. It's like Smartme's like finally getting a little something over here or something. It's like, it's okay, man. I'm good. Okay, thank you for that. That was very interesting. That's a first for me.
Well, it's a big celebration moment for you personally, and then others can watch it and see it, because they can through you have a body memory placeholder is a good way to describe it, because now your heart is leading the way when you're feeling into it, as opposed to need to grok it, to understand it, to slot it in a linear way. Now you actually were fully ensconced in your multidimensionality as you were in the conversation.
Yes.
It makes things from the very base level, it makes things so much easier, because then you can switch between the linear language and this and the other thing. But, okay, so great, yeah, easier, I get it, okay. But it's so much more fun!
Well, that's what I was just getting ready to say. That's why it struck me as kind of funny, because listen, I was telling this to Lisa the other day. One of the reasons I think that I have coveted my mind so much is that I was trying so hard most of my life to get folks to look past the physical part of me that they had issue with, that they, because when you're 490 pounds, the first thing anybody says is, oh my God, can you see that? Are you believing what you're seeing over here? That kind of thing. And so when you want somebody to pay attention to something other than your size, I developed my mind, see? So when it started going, I was like, so this is very different, you see, because yes, I lost the weight, and I also, there's lots of other stuff that went along with all of that too. But so this is the first time that I've actually felt that I actually got something that this part of me didn't actually get right.
It just felt funny. More and more and more and more and more. And
it's just so funny.
More fun.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the really cool part. Instead of freaking out because thinking that, this high intellect that I've developed over so many years, because I worked on that damn intellect pretty effing hard. Thank you very much.
We train it, and it's useless.
No, you're right. It is in this moment. That's why I find this kind of funny.
Where we're all going, it's not going to serve you, because you will get your true. It's called something different, but you know, in linear terms, intellect, right? That trueness, and that's far superior, and that's a really pale description of it, than that purported, you know, superior intellect. Of course, so that's one kind of cosmic irony, and then the other cosmic irony is you say, well, you know, you were big and people didn't pay attention, so they got to pay attention to your intellect. Okay, so now you've lost weight. Okay, and so here's the cosmic irony. You think that you're smaller, but now you're really the amazing being that you are, right? And your intellect, which was so superior, so you look here, it's like, you know, and now.
Yes, it's quite delicious, actually.
I just love it.
It is quite delicious when you look at it from all those different angles.
Because then you can really see the humor and the inanity in the grasping and the holding on to, and all of this false construct stuff that we're driven to think that, oh my God, this is the cat's meow with whipped cream on top. And you know, and I've got to get there, and it's nothing. It's so intangible. It's just air, and it's really poor quality air. I mean, the air quality of the air that's there is terrible.
No, yeah, you're exactly correct.
And it's one of those things in, you know, the claim it, own it, trust it, know it thing, that until you start to play in that and expand your aperture and expand your frequency vibration, it won't make sense.
Right. No.
It won't, you know, because you're looking for the supposed solidity of this. Well, I've got this gold pen, you know, and I'm really smart, and only certain people can have this gold pen, and I got to work all my life, and you don't know what this gold pen means.
Yeah, do you know what I had to do to get this gold pen? Yeah, I feel you on that. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yes, oh, wow. And it's, oh man, now I've got the moving trucks a little bit. So this is really cool. Man.
So I just wanted to finish up with the trusting it. You know, we've played with this before, but the trusting it piece, when you first kind of start and play with that, a lot of uncertainty comes up, a lot of angst.
For some reason, your mic is a little bit low, BZ. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, when you start with the trusting piece, again, in the linear or in the toroidal, however you want to hold it.
Sure.
Oftentimes a lot of, well, for some people, not oftentimes, but some people, uncertainty comes up, and, you know, you need to show me, you need to tell me, I haven't done this before, where's the manual, all these different things. And that's kind of going back to you're not claiming it. You know, when you're looking at that, you've got, you know, in your manual metaphor, sorry, my M's got stuck there. On your manual metaphor, you're back, you know, in the beginning of the manual on the super small, with the closed heart and the fear and all that kind of stuff. So a really good exercise on the trusting is to just breathe and relax and be soft for a moment. Have you ever been outside and, you know, it's maybe what I'm calling up right this minute, it's late morning, 9:30, 10:30-ish. It's, if it's not the heat of the day, but if this air is soft, but it's like this soft kiss on your face. And there's just a nice feel to kind of all the ambient surroundings and the noise around you, and kind of the conversations, whether it's human or tree or wind or, fowl, feather, all of that kind of thing. And if you can play in an imagery of that trusting is just that soft kiss. It's not reaching for. It's just let that embrace you. It's one of those things, instead of holding it a different way, you behold the trusting for you, because it's trusting for you. And you can step into it. You can be hugged by it. You can be embraced by it. And really, in that moment, you really unfurl your tight feathers or petals or whatever metaphor you want to use. And if you actually looked at yourself, there's sparkly effervescence over all of you, because you're emerging. And it's so beautiful to let yourself be that just for a moment. And then you can go on with the rest of the stuff, but just be in that space. And in that trusting, you've let go of the, am I going to get it right? Do they know more? Is it better? Am I going to miss the boat? And all that kind of stuff. And your being is an amazing doing of such vast, important, and complex proportions. And all you're doing is letting that kiss of the trust come on. And yes, you can do it while you're working.
Well, I have to say, you beautifully, by the way, described my the feeling that I have when I'm doing my musings in the mornings.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's and I'm doing them for me. I'm doing them for me because I'm trusting and owning everything I get.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you said about that time of morning and the soft kiss of the wind, I recognized it.
Yes.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. First of all, and you captured beautifully the way that I've been feeling about doing those. Because, and they are just for me. I'm doing them and I'm putting them out there, but they're really just for me because I'm trusting what I'm getting and I'm just giving what I get. And it's just a little playlist that I'm doing for me. So
can I play with you on that for a minute?
Sure.
Feel into, for a moment, not think into, feel into.
Well, the minute you said that, the wind picked up for Lisa, and I heard the wind, and it made me think of sitting in the backyard. Okay,
so feel into when you say, I'm just doing it for me, just a playlist for me.
I feel where you're going with that.
So when you said it the first time, before I asked if you wanted to play with it, there was not completely, but there was a a veneer of smallness on it.
Yeah,
A
no, I
veneer,
felt that.
a veneer of discounting it. And so that's a really good example of own it. Own it. Right? And then realize that as you truly own it, it's one of those things where it could be, from a linear perspective, not really much has changed, right? Although the energetic envelope quality definitely changes. But the gift that you're giving is to allow others, if they choose, to sit quietly on the grass and share that space with you. That's an intimate space. It's a very big gift. So don't diminish it.
I hadn't thought about it in that way. And but that's just one more program and conditioning.
See previous video, am I done disrespecting myself?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's so ingrained. It's just so ingrained that sometimes, until a friend lovingly says, let's play with this for a moment. And then and you have to be open to hearing that. You have to be open to seeing your own programming and conditioning and loving yourself right through it anyway, and allowing it to leave. Wow. No, apparently not done disrespecting myself yet, apparently. Not completely. Or I would have owned that a hell of a lot better than I did.
Okay,
oh well, and I'm not going to beat myself up over it.
Say, don't compound your.
No, I'm not. I'm not. It's just that's a really good. It's a really brilliant illustration, to use your terminology there, BZ, of how even when a person is expanding themselves, how easy it is to that, because that conditioning of keeping ourselves small, this is eons and eons and eons and eons and eons and eons of programming and conditioning that has been programmed into not just my field, but my cells, which, guess what, are eons old too, and loaded with programmable water. So I can see all of that programming, and yet not in the tiniest little eensy beansiest little corner. So being open to viewing it, most specifically if someone says, hey, let's take a look at, because, I could have said, oh, she's calling me out, that kind of thing. But you can't have that. I can't have that. That's not what I want. So thank you for that. That's really huge. I didn't even think of it in that term. This is why this is so valuable for me. Yeah, all of us, actually, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm really swirly. And I've got the Grinch heart thing going on again.
Yeah, I'd say that awareness that just opened is about 10 sizes bigger on your
Yeah.
And the Grinchometer there.
Wow.
And the little dog has jumped on the sleigh and he's trumpeting his baboopas and lahoopas and zazoopies.
Yeah, right? Oh, yeah. Boy, there's a whole dance going on.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything either one of you would like to add to this energetic envelope? Because this one has been rather full.
Yeah.
I feel this one is actually pretty packed.
Just a small little lunch break for me.
Well, I will have all of the usual things in all of the usual places, including how to get in touch with Lisa and or BZ at their blogs, and of course my email address. And wow. So till next time, guys. Mwah.